Hi, hello guys, my name is Mia Marie and you are currently watching my Synastry Compatibility series where I go through all the 12 signs, sun signs, and how they get along. Now, as a general disclaimer, we reference so much more than just the sun sign for compatibility, but the importance of the sun and understanding someone's sun sign and accepting it and supporting it is that the sun sign describes the motives, the behaviors, the experiences that contribute to someone's sense of sanity. So we're not talking so much about what someone needs emotionally or how they flirt or what makes them great in bed, all of those very, romantic topics. We're talking about how to support someone's vitality, someone's sense of self, and someone's healing human journey. So keep in mind that this is just a gentle introduction, and you can get so much more by booking a session with me or another fantastic astrologer. Someone who is born with the sun in Leo has come to Earth to self-actualize and self-realize. All of their behaviors, their thoughts, their failures, their successes, everything is an effort to accomplish that mission. Who am I? What is my real personality? What can I do to get the applause and the attention that I deserve? They take, being the second fire sign, they take the identity that Aries has established and they create a personality that they market and then they perform it. Now, Leo always runs the risk of adjusting themselves and their tone to get the standing ovation. But what ends up happening is as they're trying on all these different faces and they're getting approval, they still don't feel like they're being seen and valued and appreciated, and so it can create some dissonance in their younger years. As they get older, they have to practice a different type of strength. Aries is physical strength, Leo is mental strength, committing to staying with oneself, developing one's skills, paying attention to their urge and desire for creativity. It's a very creative sign. It's represented by the sun, and the sun is what gives everything on earth life. It is vitality. And so their sanity is closely tied with their ability to create something or perform something or even try to children. Leos are, generally speaking, really good with children because, again, going back to that wound around joy and being appreciated, they know what a child needs innately to thrive. And so they will often be the number one supporter of a child in whatever endeavor that they choose. They show up, with the signs, or they're the coach, or in any way that they can, they make sure that that child feels the same validation that they expect in their own partnerships and in life. And in fact, it's really good for the spirit, especially if a Leo is kind of feeling down and out, for them to be around kids because it allows their inner child to come out and play. It immediately reconnects them with joy. Children remind them about the lighter side, about the importance of creativity and the importance of engaging, say like with a team. Now with fire signs, again, we're continuing the theme of leadership. So Leos often find themselves in positions of authority and power, and they tend to do pretty well because they carry this nobility, this responsibility to please the crowd, to do what's best for everybody. But Leo is different than, say, Aries because it's a fixed sign, which means that it can be quite stubborn. Once it's made up its mind, once it's committed to something, it can be kind of hard, like Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius. It can be hard for them to switch directions. They don't like unexpected information. They don't like the plans changing, especially if they're not the ones who initiated it. And they can also be fiercely loyal and protective over the people that they love, kind of like the lion being the king of the jungle. They use their energy and their vitality, of course, to have fun and throw parties and celebrate life, but they will also protect life. They're very scary. They have a hot temper once pushed. But that fixed quality can often lead Leo, I've seen, it can lead them to stay in places longer than they need to. Like, so long as they're getting some kind of recognition or approval, if they're getting something out of the transaction, then they will stay in the relationship or they'll stay in the job, even though it's not something that they really like or find fulfilling, something that is completely devoid of creativity, for example. As I briefly mentioned earlier, Leo is a socially oriented sign, which means that when it looks out into the world, it's never just thinking about itself. It's thinking about everybody else too. And they often get irked when they're around people who only think about themselves. Like, for example, I have a lot of Aries energy in my chart, and my cousin has a lot of Leo. And one of her biggest complaints to me is like, it's not all about you. And they'll feel that way towards Aries, Taurus, Gemini. They have the clan mentality of Cancer, where there's a group of people that they are quite comfortable with, that they act as a protector over, but they need groups of people to stay stimulated and to stay engaged. They're not a lone soldier. Leos don't want to be alone. Some deal breakers for Leo. So as I said, they're here to reestablish the relationship with joy, and they're a socially oriented sign. So they judge themselves by how people receive them and how they sparkle in the eyes of others. So if they've worked, say for example, really hard on a creative project and they present it to you and you dismiss them over and over again, if you're someone who's tapped out, if you're someone who is not ever giving, if you're not a cheerleader for them, then eventually they're going to get tired of being let down, because what happens is it stimulates that wound from childhood that they're not doing enough, that they are not worthy enough. Now, they're not going to think about it that way. All they're going to know is that it hurts and it doesn't feel good, and they're going to start going to somebody else for attention, because it's not just like, oh my God, you need attention. It's like, no, that attention means something, and it means something about me to me, and it validates who I am and my personality. So it's not a surface level thing for a Leo. Being acknowledged, being celebrated by someone that they value helps them heal that wound around creativity, and it allows them to show up authentically in life. Not that they should always rely on that, but they shouldn't have a partner who doesn't appreciate their creative efforts. Another thing they don't appreciate is if you're a Debbie Downer, if you're overly emotional, if you are bringing down the vibe. Like the sun every morning, they like to rise, they like to grow, and they like to see that their energy is bringing life and inspiration and motivation and activation to the people around them. So if you're unmotivated, and if you are just sitting here swirling in your head about all of these different things and you're never in the present moment, they're not going to like that either. Leos tend to do a lot, and they do it big. They think that life is one giant act, one giant performance. We're thinking like Jennifer Lopez vibes. And so having a partner who is intimidated or turned off by that type of lifestyle and tells them to play smaller or speak a little lower or to just calm down is not the right person. It's going to kill their pilot light. It's going to depress their energy, their vitality in the long run. Leos are also very prideful. They take pride in what they do, they take pride in who they are, and they take pride in their relationship. So if you're someone who goes out into the world and makes a fool of yourself, if you are a public nuisance, if you embarrass them in any way, they're going to want to create distance from you, and they may even leave the relationship because you are an extension of them in your eyes, and they expect that you will live up to their expectations. And they will also make sure that when they show up to your events, that they are a reflection of you, and they bring their best selves to the table. Someone who is born with their sun in Aquarius has a soul that came into this world to awaken our consciousness. It's almost as if they have a different set of eyes than the rest of us. They see the world differently. And a lot of the time, stereotypical astrology is like, oh my God, you're trying to be different, or you're trying to be unique. No, that's just the way that they see the world. And often it creates this immediate recognition that you don't fit anywhere. Aquarius doesn't fit in any specific space, and it creates social anxiety. They don't know how to act. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. There is an ambivalence towards being around people, because they don't quite, it doesn't compute in their head. Their minds are like computers. They are the 11th sign, which means that they are the third, the eldest air sign. So they take the perspective, the information that Gemini collects. They know that they have a mind. And then they take the information that Libra collects. They know how to put themselves in other people's shoes. They know how to compromise. They know how to negotiate. They know how to establish trust. And then they go, okay, how do we get everyone to trust each other? How do we create a community? And how do we develop this community? How do we transform our experience of life together? How do we elevate everybody? The interesting paradox with Aquarius is that they are knowledgeable. They're a resource. They have leadership skills. They are often the people that others go to when they don't know what to do as it relates to a community or group activity. They're human rights activists. They can find the gaps in structures. They know how to advance us in a very positive way, but they don't like being the center of attention. And oftentimes they don't like talking about themselves. They may feel internally like they don't want to attach to a label because they have a hard time accepting and celebrating the ego. They're the opposite of Leo. Leo is all about, here's my personality, here's how I shine. Aquarius takes that attitude but positions it towards the community. How can we shine? How can we develop? How can we be celebrated in the most honest and authentic way? And so you'll find that they're comfortable behind a computer or on a phone, but can be a little socially awkward. I think that they would feel socially awkward or as if there is never a place for them, even when they are in a community. And this feeling can be uncomfortable for them at first. It can manifest as social anxiety, and they may even avoid social situations depending on where they are inside of their head. But it serves a purpose. And that purpose is that you need to remain detached enough so that you can innovate, so that you can think your own thoughts, so that you can go off in your own direction. And oftentimes they're trailblazers, they're trendsetters. They are always 10 steps ahead of the community. And because they are also a fixed sign, they're stubborn, they are unmovable in that. They have to have a certain level of confidence in their ideas and opinions in order to say, no, I'm not going to conform. You are going to come here. And here's why you're going to come here. And this is how it benefits you. And this is how the human race is developing, whether you like it or not. They have this amazing ability to gaze into space and project a very clear image of a future that is totally within our capability. Like we can totally arrive to that space with them. I've said this and I will continue to say it, that even though Aquarius is an air sign, it is very sensitive, more sensitive than it realizes. And what happens when they're overstimulated is they become numb and they detach. This is the soul wound of someone who has strong Aquarius in their chart, because things are always changing and because these changes affect so many people in so many negative ways that they feel equipped or responsible for repairing. They will detach from the part of themselves that cares just to stay afloat, just to stay with the changes in culture and society. And so there is this robotic tone to them, or there can be just an obvious lack of emotion. You can be struggling with something and you can be crying in front of them and explaining all the which ways that you're heartbroken or let down, and just the opposite. You could be super happy about something and there's this robot before you like, I understand. The way of loving is that they've often researched what you're going through and what's going on in your brain and how humans typically act and how to repair that specific thing. And so they're able to like spit back this report to solve your problem, but it can be hard for them to stay in the emotion or to sympathize with you. And it's not a reflection of how much they do or don't care about you. It's more so a reflection of their internal state of being. It's hard for them to access emotions. Surprisingly enough, however, they make excellent partners because they understand the Libra lesson of trust and compromise. But they also are not looking for something hot and fiery, that flirty fling that Gemini wants. They want a friend. They understand that if they are going to commit to something long-term, they have to be with someone that they like. They don't have to have the same interests, but this person has to be stimulating and intelligent and good-hearted and good-spirited. They want to be with their best friend. That is their ideal partner. And so they may hesitate to commit. I haven't heard too many complaints about Aquarius people not getting into relationships, but when they do, it tends to last because they do think long-term. And they often choose someone from I don't want to say non-emotional space because the spirit, the soul does respond to people, but it's not so much about how you make them feel. It's that you guys are just so compatible with each other that it makes sense for you to be together. And that's why Valentine's Day surprises everybody that it's in an Aquarius season. But traditionally, that's when people were getting married. And statistically, Aquarians have the most success when they get married because, again, they marry for the right reasons. They're using their head and their soul together to make the just call. Aquarius and love, they will want to talk to you. They'll want to know what you're thinking, what you've learned, what is stimulating you. They're going to have those late night conversations. They're going to be very present with you. And again, not super emotional about it, but they are wanting to collect data on you. They're going to master you in one way, shape, and form. That's a kind of hidden quality to them, is that they're constantly collecting data on you. So they can put it into their computer and they know what to expect and they know what you want and they know where you are mentally, emotionally. And they're just so friendly. That's what it is. They're just so nice to be around. I don't have any complaints about an Aquarius. Now, some downsides to dating an Aquarius, or not downsides, but what they don't like is they don't like somebody who is negative, emotional, or moody, because it flies in the face of their energy. And it's not so much that you affect their mood, it's like what you're saying and what you're doing is irritating and inefficient and a waste of time. And those are all things that they prize. They like being efficient. They like using energy positively. And if you're focused on things from the past or things that you can't control, then you're not making good use of this brilliant brain that you have. Another thing they won't like is if you're impolite or rude to other people, or if you don't care about social movements. If you are mispronouncing people's names after they've corrected you, if you're not in the know about what communities are working through what, or if you have a blatant disregard for the overall quality of humanity and people's lives, they will have no respect for you, because this is what their life is about. They are in service to people. They are trying to break the minds, the structures that keep us bound and limited and trapped in a pastime. And so you embodying that energy, it's like, oh my God, no, you're the enemy, you're the foe. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus. Uranus is the modern ruler, but Saturn is the traditional ruler. And so typically you have two types of Aquarius. And what's interesting is that they embody both of them at different times of their life. So either the Aquarius person comes in very quirky, atypical, doesn't fit in. And then as time goes on, they become more Capricorn-like. They're more serious and they're about the mission and the rules and following protocols. Or you have someone who ages backwards, who is all about the rules and tools and following what authority says and doing what you're supposed to do. And then they get really quirky in their older years. So it just depends. Now, going back to deal breakers, Aquarians are rebellious by their programming. They come into this world needing to stir shit up, needing to awaken our consciousness to pull us along. If it weren't for Aquarians, we wouldn't have women's rights. We wouldn't have gay rights. It's that energy that progresses us as the human race. And so if they are trying to rebel against a specific structure and they're starting to embody that rebellious energy, and you shun them and you further ostracize them, if you are not a friend or an ally in their development and experimentation, they're going to want to leave you because they're stubborn. That's what they do. They dig their heels in. They won't be emotional about it. They won't yell at you. They won't raise their voice. They won't criticize you. They'll just sit you down and say, you know, this isn't working out. I don't think we're a good match. And they can do this because their passion is towards people, groups, social reform. And so they don't inherently want or see the need for a partner unless they have a partner who, you know, is truly a partner and shows up for them and supports them. Then they understand the value of that relationship. But until that point, if you're just a nuisance, if you're just another critic, if you're just someone who makes them feel more weird than they already feel, what's the point of having you? See your way to the door. Thank you. Bye. I will say this though. One thing that I've noticed through working with clients with Aquarius placements is that once they are in a committed relationship, and they have in their minds that I'm going to be with this person for the long run, if they actually have married somebody and it's not working out, it can take them a long time to actually leave. And it's because they're committed. They're stubborn. They're a fixed sign. They often do what they believe in. And I think that's kind of the lesson that you learn when you're with these types of partners, is Aquarians awaken to their own unconscious motives through these dysfunctional relationships. They self-actualize through these relationships that don't work, but that fixed quality allows them to stay in relationships that they would otherwise recognize as unhealthy. But all in all, Aquarius is a great partner in, I would say passion, I would say play, but it's neither of those. They're just a great partner to have in life because they will commit to you, they won't play games, and they are focused on something bigger than themselves at all times. They want to make an impact. They want to help us all grow and develop. Sun in Leo, Sun in Aquarius. We have sister signs here, which means that on the zodiac wheel, they are as far apart as you can get. So, with that, we have some natural trials and tribulations, but intense attraction to the other person because there is this unconscious or soul recognition that this person is holding the other half of a much larger truth. You guys are both seeing the same thing, but you have completely different perspectives and two completely different approaches. So let's get into it. So elementally, we have a beautiful balance here of fire and air. When these two come together, they only add to one another's lives. Think about when you mix fire and air in real life, we get fireworks. Versus if you mix like fire and water, you have to really be conscious not to put the other person out. This relationship doesn't have that specific issue. Now, these two energies, just as pure Aquarius, Sun in Aquarius, pure Sun in Leo, these are extroverted signs, which means that they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, man, like I'm tired, I'm groggy, like what am I thinking? They feel empty. In order to recharge, they need to get out in the real world and do something. They need to move their body to generate more energy, which seems atypical, but probably not to you if you are a Leo or an Aquarius person. You got to stay on the go. And so these two will have a natural rhythm that is similar to the other. So there won't be any fights about when we're going home, when we're going out, why we're going out, why are we using energy in this way. You guys are able to keep up with each other as you guys go throughout your various adventures. Leo is a socially oriented sign, which means that it is here to understand the value of its creations, the value of itself, by assessing how brightly they shine in the eyes of other people. And that especially means their partner. They will often accomplish things that summon a crowd and consequently an applause at one point in time. And if their partner is not with them on this journey of celebrating the self, Leo can get pretty irritated and they might want to seek out validation in other ways. Aquarius is a universally oriented sign, which means that it does want something to shine, but it's a community, not itself. And in fact, Aquarius is very gifted, very talented at avoiding a sense of self. A lot of Aquarian characters don't really know who they are, and they don't want to explore it too much because they're constantly changing. And once you put a label on yourself, you have to live by a certain set of standards, and to step away from that label requires a lot of extra work. And so they just avoid it entirely. And so you can get this kind of crunchy dynamic where Leo is constantly poking at the one thing that Aquarius can't stand, and that is the celebration of the self. And that is the biggest issue in the relationship, is that Aquarius can be short-tempered or more Saturnian as it comes to their language with Leo. So they will use their intellect and their words to belittle Leo in effort to humble or maybe to widen their perspective and start thinking about other people and communities and marginalized groups and human rights movements. But really what it will do is it will directly it will inhibit Leo's development and cause Leo to kind of flicker around and flutter in other directions. And what adds to this crunchiness is that they are both fixed signs, which means they are stubborn, they're holding on to whatever they believe to be true, and they are generally unmovable. Therefore, when they argue, it's like, hear me, no, hear me, no, hear me. It's like their ideas are just bouncing off the wall and going back to themselves respectively, versus having a dialogue that encourages growth and development. And as I said in the beginning, it's because they are only seeing one piece of the truth and they think that that's all that there is. The gift of this relationship is that when you establish trust in each other, when there is enough, I don't even want to say love. I just want to say when there is enough trust in your partner, you will say, you know what? I don't see what you see, but I'm going to take a leap of faith and try. I'm going to create space in my mind to begin to entertain this idea. I'm going to go get something to give you an example. I'm going to create some space in my mind for you to show me how this can be true, because maybe I'm missing something. That's where the gold is. Take into account Exhibit A, my cute purse. It's the camera, right? Okay, so let's just say for gigs, you're Leo, and someone places this in front of us, and they're like, describe what you see to your partner. I'll be Aquarius. Hi. And you're like, well, I see a camera. And I'm going to be like, no, I see a purse very clearly. See how we are both telling the truth, but because what we're looking at is so vastly different, there is some kind of pushback to acknowledge and accept that what the other person is saying is true. When we combine them, we get the truth, a camera bag, a camera purse. And so a lot of times in this relationship dynamic, you will find that you guys are butting heads because you are insisting that what you see is not only the truth, but the whole truth. And that's where the error lies. So as you guys are hitting like prime peak, like horn to horn moments, that is your time to grow and expand and truly listen to what the other person has to say. And you'll find, after you wrestle it out, that you guys are both correct. I recognize that what I'm about to say is an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway. Now, in relationships, we are constantly advised to compromise, to meet in the middle. And when you are dating your polar opposite sign, it can kind of feel like one of you really wants Chinese and one of you really wants Italian. And so you guys opt for Mexican. It's like, well, neither one of you is fully satisfied. When you're in a relationship with someone who is directly opposite with you, there are times where compromise is just not in the cards. You have to surrender, you have to rest your defenses and trot on uncharted territory or go somewhere that you would not want to be. And that's the best way to accelerate your development and your connection. Do not let go of what you believe to be true, because what ends up happening is if you try to compromise, right, in the name of peace, in the name of love, you're like, okay, well, I thought this was true, but you're unwilling to accept it, so I'll cut that out, and your person does the exact same thing, then there is still a bundle of information, valuable information that gets lost in the process. I encourage you to hold on to what you believe to be true and wrestle with each other so you guys can figure out where everything goes, because everything does have a place. So that is the beauty of this relationship, is that when you guys come together, you understand the full breadth of human experience, of celebrating your personality or celebrating humanity is really what it's about. And that is another inherent blessing between the two of you, is that you guys have what the other person lacks. Aquarius can look at Leo and say, you know what, the world is actually so much bigger. Instead of using your personality to market yourself and get your own approval, why don't you use your personality to get this group of people the attention that they need? Or why don't you use your leadership skills and whatever it may be to help this group? And Leo can look at Aquarius and say, you are a person, you're a human, whether or not you like it. And it's your job to celebrate yourself, to find ways to get comfortable, get over your stage fright. And so when these two come together, you get an incredibly supportive, powerful partnership. You just have to be willing to bend and be flexible, which is not something that comes naturally to you. So it feels like not elementally, but based upon your motives, you guys will see what the other is doing, but want to pull away. And in those moments when you find yourselves turning your backs on each other, I challenge you to turn and face each other and be like, okay, what? And it's magic. So this is just one component of your entire relationship. There are literally 2,000 combinations per birth chart. So together, I mean, we're talking about an extremely personalized compatibility chart. So if you would like to learn more about your relationship or just your birth chart in general, you can find me at wellandrising.com/services.